We will be discussing the case of second layer of defense in smart home environments, and more specifically we will see that how mobile agent and cross-layer technologies could be used to offer more robust security in smart home environment. I look forward to see you all in this talk.
Welcome to talk.cybercni.fr.
Bienvenue.
Team connection.
All right, welcome everybody to Talk CyberCNI.fr, our monthly cybersecurity speaker series co-organized by the Chair CyberCNI of IMT Atlantique in Rennes, the Pôle Excellence Cyber and La Région Bretagne. Our goal with this series is creating awareness of the relevance of cybersecurity in our everyday lives. With current ransomware, as you have seen how relevant it is, because it can really touch everybody from a hospital to the water supply to many more applications surrounding us every day. To create this awareness, we organize every last Wednesday in the month at 5 o'clock p.m. a talk with experts from industry and academia. Today we have an expert from academia. But it's not only about listening, it's about fostering the exchange and the discussion. And therefore, we have several interactive elements, and I will hand over to Alex, who will explain to us a bit how they work. So I will just switch the view so that he can then explain it. So here you already see the link on the left, and I will show also Alex.
Yes. Okay, so thank you, Mark Oliver. So as you can see, you have a Slido QR code or Slido link to access our Q&A part, and you have some small poll when we ask you a question about what does a smart home mean. So if you answer these questions, this will create a word cloud, which will be interesting to investigate at the end of the presentation. So from now on, you can ask questions or you can answer to this kind of poll. It's up to you. And we will answer the question after the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So I just switch back to me. Okay. Okay, yeah, and as Alex said, so go to the tool, go to slido.com and then enter cybercni-2. The link will also be shown during the presentation, so please put all your questions there. If you have questions in the YouTube chat, we also have people in person. Leo, we will support you there. Nicola will take care a little bit of the social media together with Olivia, so we have lots of coverage there. And please ask a lot of questions, because the more interactive it is, the better. And yeah. So now you know a little bit about the technicalities, and I want to welcome you today after the fantastic start with Frederick Jules from Airbus last time, because I'm very happy to welcome now an academic speaker, and Mohamed Usman is from the Cyber Wales, and I'm especially happy of this collaboration because the Brittany region and Wales, we are currently trying to or working towards a close collaboration in cybersecurity, and therefore I'm especially happy to welcome Mohamed. So our speaker today is Mohamed Usman. He received a Master in Computer Science from the PIMAS UR University in Pakistan. Afterwards, he received a PhD from the Griffith University in Australia. He did a postdoc with the University of Surrey in the UK. He has more than 17 years of experience in academia and also industry. And he is currently a member of the cybersecurity research group at the University of South Wales in the UK. Mohamed's current research interests include the design and analysis of security and privacy techniques for cyber physical systems, security and privacy issues of IoT enabled and smart systems, security, trust, privacy of cross-discipline domains, formal and statistic modeling, applied machine learning, and data analytics in several domains such as health, social science, and more. Mohamed will talk to us today about securing smart homes, cross-layer second line of defense. And that said, Mohamed, I hand over to you. I switch the screen, and then I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Mark. Is my voice clear enough?
It's very good, loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, right. Thank you very much for inviting me for this talk, and obviously giving us an opportunity to interact with you guys and obviously people across the globe. So today, as Mark has mentioned, I would be talking about securing smart homes, and within that, particular topic, we will discuss the concept related to cross-layer second line of defense. So in terms of agenda of today's talk, we have packed agenda. First, I will provide a little bit of background of some related topics so that we can also take all those people on board who has limited background in these areas. I will cover a number of related concepts in the initial part of my talk, and I will then jump into the core content, which is obviously related to second line of defense in uh, smart home, and then towards the end of the talk, I will provide an overview of the current ongoing research projects which are going on in in our cybersecurity research group, and then obviously we will have some time to discuss. I mean, queries related to this talk, content covered in this talk, and even beyond this. Right. So if we look at the concept of Internet of Things, so these Internet of Things applications, they have some underlying infrastructure which is based on sensors and actuators. So sensors and actuators. Those sensors are responsible to collect data from their immediate environment, and then obviously after the collection of the data, there are some sort of processing on that data, and based on that processing, actuators could act upon the given instructions. So based on this technological development, we are witnessing a number of smart application across the world, whether those are related to individual smart homes, those are related to smart cities, or obviously if we talk about a more complex cyber, more complex critical national infrastructure. So those applications are related to, country-wide infrastructure. So if we specifically look at the diagram given on on this slide, you can see the smart city itself has number of application areas. Those range from smart living, obviously smart home is a key component of those smart living environment, and then smart government, whether those are metropolitan level government or local council governments, and then smart environment, smart economy, smart people, smart mobility. So they all are equipped with certain gadgets, with certain tools, and facilitated by those tools, obviously uh, we can have much more informed decision making in different areas, such as related to health, related to safety of individuals, related to some cultural aspects of human being, related to environment, related to some legal aspects, e-government, and the spectrum is very wide. So you can see that how influential Internet of Things applications are in our modern day living. So if in our context, in this talks context, when we refer to the global environment, we would be talking about smart city environment, since the core focus of this talk is on smart home environment. So smart home would actually serve the local context. So smart home is a local context and smart city is a global context. Exactly. I mean, if we want to narrow down our discussion, we want to look at what is smart home exactly. Smart home is nothing but, it's a house where we have a number of sensors and actuators deployed, and those sensors and actuators are responsible for carrying out different nature of tasks. For example, we can have a light switch installed, we can have socket actuator installed, we can have an infrared camera, a smoke detector, motion detector, gas leak sensor, smart windows, uh, body sensors. Even, you can wear some gadgets, and you can, and then all these sensors, they are connected through either Wi-Fi or some other networking technologies, and they are uh, connected, and then you can access these different devices through a central application, typically a mobile application, or even through your laptop. You can manage different aspects of your smart home using that application, either within your home or even from outside your home, even if you are sitting somewhere overseas, thousands of miles away from your house. So in this way, you can have better control of your house, and obviously, you can change temperature of certain parts of your house. You can sense smoke if there is fire. You can I mean through those sensors you can receive an alert on your mobile phone that there is some sort of incident inside your house. So this is one of the normal living. This would be one of the normal living environment in future, which could be envisioned. We can say it would be very common in coming few years. So when we link these smart homes with the smart cities, the global context, so you can see there are installation of smart meters, whether those are gas consumption, gas gas uh, gas uh, gas related, those are electricity related, or those are water related meters. So those meters are linked with the smart city infrastructure, and they periodically transmit their data to their service providers, and from there, obviously, there there could be there could be a number of different services, such as better management of different resources, better management of electricity distribution in certain peak hours. This is only one application. There are a number of applications which could be deployed to have a better learning environment. So you can see here, this is only one application, the smart home application, which could have a dramatic impact in optimum utilization of resources. Uh, so these are some of the basic concepts related to smart homes. So now let's have a look at cyber security. So if you look at, I mean, as we have looked at the underlying technology that enables or that relies the functionality of smart home, uh, that is basically sensing and actuating technology. And no, it's not only sensing and actuating technology, but obviously we have traditional ICT infrastructure, information and communication technology infrastructure, coupled with that sensing and actuating technology. So as a whole, it provides the different services to the consumers. So this whole infrastructure, whether it's a conventional ICT infrastructure or the infrastructure that is based on sensors and actuator, that is vulnerable to plethora of attacks, variety of attacks. Those attacks could be social and phishing attacks, password and configuration attacks, smart and mobile hacking attacks, uh, other different natures of attacks, and the target of those attacks could vary from individual users to some endpoint system and servers, some network and application, some mobile devices, some database server. So so depending upon the target of the attackers, the target could vary from front-end devices to back-end database, front-end computational devices to back-end database servers. So here the spectrum is very broad. If we look at uh, you know the specific types of attacks listed by OWASP, the top 10 attack types which are most prevalent in web environment. So injection attack is one of the most prevalent attack, which could directly uh, directly affect on the functionality of of many online applications. So some of the most popular injection attacks include SQL operating system and Active Directory injection attacks. So these are all focused on databases, corresponding databases. And similarly, we can have some broken authentication attack when you log into certain services, certain online services, certain web services. So there is an establishment of connection of with, which is session. Uh, if if we if we state it more specifically, there is an establishment of a session between your client machine and the serving machine. So you need to have some sort of authentication mechanism. And that session relies on the authentication credential. So attackers typically they try to uh, steal steal in those authentication details, and then obviously they try to break the authentication, and ultimately the session could compromise. So then sensitive data exposure attacks, if I mean currently due to privacy laws across the globe, if we talk about from Europe's perspective, GDPR is the famous regulation. So your applications need to be compliant with those regulatory requirements. If your uh, security measures are not strong enough, then probably some sensitive or personal data could be leaked. Then XML external entities. If we talk about machine to machine communication, when different machines communicate with each other, typically, if we refer this discussion with the Internet of Things technology, many sensors they talk to each other independently without involvement of any human being. So they need to have a certain sort of standardization mechanism to talk to each other. So typically they use XML uh, language to talk to each other. So this XML external entities is one of the most prevalent attacks type system. And then broken access control, security misconfiguration, cross-site scripting, insecure deserialization, uh, using components with known vulnerabilities, insufficient logging and monitoring. So these, there is a long list of attacks, but these are some of the most prevalent attacks. So you can see these are very technical nature of attacks, and they cover actually they target actually different dimensions of information and communication technology infrastructure, and also if we extend them to Internet of Things technology, so they target that infrastructure as well. But by the way, but these attacks are focused on application. If we look at the OSI model, OSI model. So there are some other kinds of threats, other kinds of attacks which are prevalent, whether those are denial of service attack, distributed denial of service attack, or some other attack, which we will discuss in a minute. But you can see there are literally it's a broad range of attacks which could be realized in this situation. Uh, is it really possible to uh, to provide a robust security to critical critical system, whether those are your smart home system or critical national infrastructure systems, such as related to road infrastructure, energy distribution infrastructure, water distribution infrastructure, or some other national, other networks. Those have national level importance. So NIST, in a cybersecurity framework, they have provided a guideline related to how to how to uh, how to manage incidents, security related incident. So it's basically a cyclic process which involves number of phases, starting from identification phase, then we have protect phase, detect phase, respond phase, and recover phase. In identification phase, basically you have to identify the threat, and then moving forward you need to make sure that you have taken certain steps to protect a reoccurrence of those kind of events in future. And for that, obviously, you need to have detection capability. uh, you need to have certain called to detect some malicious activities within your network. And then once you detect those malicious activity, then you need to have proper plan in place, and obviously you need to have enough capability to respond to those attacks. And then obviously recovery and business continuity plan you need to have in place. The work which we are going to discuss in this talk, that is actually related to detect phase. Basically, we have proposed a method which can be used to enhance the detection capability of overall cybersecurity infrastructure, focusing on smart home application. So by the way, anomaly detection is the core domain which we in which we have proposed our solution. So which is actually a subdomain of intrusion detection and prevention system. So if we look at high level, we can say that it belongs to both protection and detection phases of this NIST framework. But specifically, we have proposed solution in the detection phase. So we have enhanced the capability, the security arsenal of detecting some some particular sort of anomalies, either those are caused due to attacks, errors, or faults. So it's a second line of defense. If you talk about uh, from if you talk about the traditional security defense boundaries, so first line of defense is typically your firewall, which actually acts like a gatekeeper, and it it and on using firewall you can basically define ingress and egress traffic filters, and you can control traffic to a certain extent. And then if there are some insider attackers, then probably firewall would not be that useful. So then you need to have more robust security countermeasures in place. So intrusion detection and anomaly detection system are some of those methods which could enable you to identify insider as well as outsider attackers. Right. So another related concept is layer-wise and cross-layer model. Um, if you are familiar with conventional OSI layered model, there we have 7 layers, um, starting from physical layer up to application layer. We have number of layers with their defined functionalities. So all of these layers, if we look from attack surface perspective, we can see there are number of corresponding attacks. For instance, physical layer is vulnerable to sniffing attack. Some sniffing could be carried out on wireless communication medium to launch sniffing attacks. Then at data link layer, some spoofing attack, network layer, man in the middle attack. So similarly, all these layers have their corresponding attacks. So that's another view. If you can, previously we have discussed most of the attacks from applications perspective, and many of them they work at application layer and at the upper layers. But if you look at the certain attack type from OSI layers perspective, you can see many attacks they target particular layers of the OSI layer model. If we talk about the Internet of Things, especially smartphone environment, so there typically our relevant reference model is 802.15.4 and Zigbee stack, where we have bottom three layers: physical layer, MAC layer, and network layer, that is defined by 802.15.4 protocol. And then we have an upper application layer protocol. Those are upper layer set of procedures. Those are defined by the 802.15.4 and corresponding Zigbee application protocol. And for that, we have actually proposed a cross layer solution. Cross layer means where we are using more than one layers measurements to not only to detect anomalies but also to optimize the transmission of mobile agent. Right. So final preliminary concept is mobile agent, and after discussing this, we'll come to the main business. So if you look at this slide, I mean the mobile agent could be deployed on static physical ICT infrastructure, the conventional ICT infrastructure, even web-based environment. If you look at the web-based environment, there we have static agents which could do their designated jobs on behalf of their application. For instance, if you want to check the cheapest price to travel from France to somewhere else in the world, so you would query, you would provide certain filters to the application, and based on your query, many static agents at the backend would work. They would coordinate with each other, and ultimately, your agent would pull up the cheapest price for you and display and hand over that information to your application, and that ultimately that would be displayed by your web browser for you. So agents work, but with these wireless computing, where we have many mobile nodes coming and joining the network, leaving the network, uh, probably we need some sort of mobile agents where mobile agents can move from one node to another node, and then they can complete their designated task on the host machine, and then they can move from that host machine to another machine. So this computing paradigm is more helpful uh, in those situations where you have deployed sensors in difficult terrains, in war field, or in some other places, and you want to update the system, update the system on those nodes, or if you want to communicate some sort of information, or they want to coordinate with each other, uh, they can use this mobile agent technology. And then mobile agent uh, mobile agents mobility could have two dimensions: strong and weak mobility. In strong mobility, they actually also carry the context with them from one node to the next node. So basically what they do, they actually stop their execution at particular times on a particular node, and then they carry their execution state with them, and move to another machine, and there they restart their computation based on the locally received data. And this is how they, depending on the itinerary, they roam among different nodes to complete their tasks. So this is one of the important component which we have used in our proposed model. So basically that is used as the initial work which we done prior to this work, and we utilize mobile agent for in situ verification of source of anomalies, just to identify whether the uh, anomalies have occurred in situ or in transit. That is on a particular machine or during the transmission of data from that node, from a particular node to uh, the uh, the corresponding cluster head node. Right, so we have covered enough basics, enough details of different related concept. So I'm sure most of you are now on now on the same page, and we can now uh, explore the core content. So we have actually presented a mobile agent-based cross-layer anomaly detection in smart home sensor networks using fuzzy logic. So the smart home sensor networks are those is basically a network which is powered by sensor nodes within a smart home environment. So those nodes have the responsibility of collecting measurements from their surrounding environment, whether those are related to gas consumption, those are related to electricity consumption, or those are related to some other kinds of measurements. So what is the exact problem which we have solved in this particular work? So if you see as we discussed before, smart home environments are vulnerable to anomalies. Their data, the data that are transmitted by those tiny sensor nodes, those are vulnerable to anomalies, and there could be several reasons for those anomalies. Maybe because of some faults, some malfunctioning in those tiny nodes, some transmission error, or some sort of sophisticated attacks. Uh, one or more of the attacks which we have already discussed. So because of any one or more of these reasons, the data that are transmitted by those individual sensors may have some anomalous values. So this could ultimately affect the reliability of the received sense data. So I mean, if you look at the overall functionality of the application, the mobile application, I mean, you make all the decision based on the data provided by those individual sensors. And if imagine if you are not receiving the correct values of data, then you are bound to make incorrect decisions. So let's say if there is no fire uh, in your house, and your application generates an alarm that there is a fire in your house. So uh, you may call fire team in your locality, and so that could be that would be actually a false alarm. So that would have, I mean, in certain parts of the world, if you give a wrong call to fire brigade, so you are penalized for that. So you can see what kind of outcome it could have. So we need to have some sort of mechanism to identify, to detect these anomalies, and for that we have actually proposed this solution. Right. So now we let's try to go into a little bit more depth. So are there any existing solutions, any prior solution in this domain? If we look at the pile of books, pile of literature, just try to find what is the state of the art. So anomaly detection is a well-researched area, well-documented area. So are conventional, now the question is that, are conventional anomaly detection approaches suitable in this situation? Well, they may be to certain extent. They may provide better accuracy, but as I mentioned before, that we utilize mobile agent for optimum. We utilize mobile agent for in situ verification of the source of anomaly. So that actually makes the overall system more robust, and also uh, there are some individual bits and pieces in past studies, uh, and most of them have actually worked on a particular layer. Either that's an application layer or that's on a communication link. None of them have considered the graph layer approach. So in this particular work, uh, we have tried to propose sort of uh, defense in depth solution where uh, we collected cross layer data, and we tried to use that collected data for multiple purposes, not only for detecting anomalies but also for but also use that information for verification of the source of anomalies, and also for optimum transmission of mobile agent. So why we need to optimize mobile agent transmission? So if you look at the processing capability, the computing capability of those tiny sensor nodes, they have, I mean, they many of them are battery operated devices, and those are very tiny machines, and the transmission of one bit is typically equal to the computation of 1000 bits. So you can see how expensive is communication operation. So we cannot freely transmit mobile agent every time whenever we receive an alarm, just to verify whether the source of anomaly is on a particular node or the anomaly has occurred during transmission. So we need to optimize mobile agent transmission. So we also proposed a mechanism for optimum mobile agent transmission in this study. And then there was another underlying issue. Previous mobile agent enabled studies defined crisp boundaries to characterize the behavior of sensor nodes. That is, they have strict boundaries, and if there are some observation, those are lying just outside those boundaries, then you are bound to receive some sort of alarm. So which may not be uh, which may not be a good idea in certain situations, especially if you are talking about uh, temperature-related readings. So if you have set the bound of 25 degrees Celsius, and there is an observation and it's giving you value of 25.1, so then your system will generate an alarm. It's not efficient enough to ignore that alarm. So we need to define some sort of fuzzy boundaries here rather than defining some crisp boundaries. So for that, we have actually utilized the fuzzy logic. Now, the question is that to solve this issue, what are the other relevant issues? So how about underlying stochastic variability of data? How about the randomness of data, the random distribution of underlying data? So these all are some of the factors which are not considered by the previous study. So we have considered all these different factors, and we have proposed a novel method for a mobile agent-based cross-layer anomaly detection in smart home environment using fuzzy logic. So for that, our proposal is based on these core aspects. The first, we propose the method, a regions computation method based on statistical procedures to define different regions for decision making related to mobile agent transmission. And then we defined a fuzzy logic based cross layer rule base with corresponding algorithm, uh, which uh, which is not only capable to detect anomalies at with high detection accuracy, but also by considering the communication link state, it can decide whether we need to transmit mobile agent or not for in situ verification of the source of anomalies. And then obviously we implemented our work on a real test bed and tested it environment. If you look at this diagram, so this is the core architecture of our proposed solution. We have three kinds of nodes. If we refer those smart home machine, those smart home nodes with the conventional topology. So we have hierarchical topology. where we have a uh, top level V1 nodes. We termed top level node as a V1 node, which could be a laptop or any other such kind of devices, laptop or a mobile phone or cell phone, etc. Then we have V2 level node. So V2 level nodes are cluster head nodes. And then we have a number of V3, that's the third level nodes. And many V3 nodes are member of, of a particular cluster. And then they report to corresponding second level, V2 level node. So this is how basically we deploy, uh, we can categorize different nodes in the smart home environment, and then we can deploy this kind of a defense mechanism to protect it from certain types of anomalies. And if you look at this particular diagram, you can see the cross layer crisp observations are coming from Z3 nodes, lowest level of nodes, and those are received by the controlling unit. So this infrastructure is installed on your uh, V1 V1 node, that is your laptop or your mobile phone, your cell phone. So you are receiving observation from all sensor nodes from within your smart home, and then there is a controlling unit which is responsible for receiving these observations and handing over those observations to this cross layer expert system, where those values are fuzzified. uh, they're based on the membership function, which I will discuss in a minute. So after the fuzzification, it goes to this expert system where certain predefined rules are present. And after the evaluation of the observation from those rules, basically the status of that observation is decided, and then some defuzzification mechanism is completed, and result is handed back to controlling unit. And uh, if there is a need of transmission of mobile agent, then controlling unit will trigger the movement of mobile agent, and it will transmit mobile agent to verify the source of the anomaly. Uh, Otherwise, if it's tolerable, uh, it's there is just minor variation in the data, but it's not significant enough. Then only the current trust value of the node could be changed, and then that data could be handed over to the aggregation unit, where it could be stored for performing day-to-day decision making in the smart home environment. So this is a high level overview of our scheme. If we look uh, at the mechanics, if we have a little more closer look at the mechanics of the scheme, we can see we proposed a regions computation method where uh, we can define normal based on these cross layer feature set. The cross layer feature set has two subsets of features. One is related to one is termed as node feature, and other is termed as link state feature, communication link state. So within node features category, we have sensor reading, then battery status, and in link state category, we have link quality indicator, RSSI, and packet error rates. These are considered to build the profiles of individual sensor nodes within smart home environment. So we defined fuzzy numbers, normal, tolerated, and anomalous. So not normal observations are those observations uh, which are within the predefined bounds of a particular node. Tolerated, if you see in this diagram, all the observations that fall within C and D, those would be normal observation, and our system would not take any action whenever we receive these kind of observation. And if the received observation falls in the adjoining area, that is called tolerated area, which is defined here by this fuzzy number, and that is the area. So then probably we cannot transmit mobile agent, but we can decrement the trust count of particular sensor node. We can say there is some problem, but it's not a significant enough problem uh, which which allows the transmission of mobile agent to verify the source of anomaly, because as I mentioned before, the transmission of mobile agent is an expensive operation and we need to perform it carefully. And if we have some observations that are falling far away from the normal area defined by this A fuzzy number, we term them as anomalous. Then in that situation, obviously we will initiate the transmission of mobile agent. So then these are some of the corresponding statistical uh, formulas which we defined in our work. Obviously, we actually borrowed the concept of Six Sigma, the conventional Six Sigma approach, where we have multiple standard, we can use multiple standard deviations, and we borrowed that concept and we applied that concept here, and we computed relevant statistical formulas, and we defined different regions for different nodes, and then based on those normal profiles, we can actually detect anomalies, different types of anomalies. Right. Then we defined a cross-layer rule base, which has certain number of rules, and obviously, if we talk about the structure of rule, they follow the standard structure: if, antecedents, and then consequence. So antecedents have 5 input linguistic variables, and those are our feature set. Uh, Obviously, sensor reading, battery status, link quality indicator, receive signal strength indicator, and packet error rate. So these input linguistic variables are connected through and logical operator. So and logical operator, and then each of them can have either normal, tolerated, or anomalous fuzzy numbers. And then consequence are decisions. If there are, if there is, if uh, if we have certain combination of antecedents, then we can make certain decisions. So basically, there are 3 types of decisions which we need to make in this case. The first one is D1, is basically defining aggregation of normal sense data. D2 defining decrement of current trust value, and D3 is about triggering mobile agent. So these 3 decisions we can make based on different possible states of antecedent uh, variables. So based on this, we define 243 different rules, and every observation actually goes through this rule base, and then based on their status, the corresponding decision could be decided. We presented a corresponding algorithm uh, where uh, we we have estimated regions for all features for all nodes. This is a snapshot of an algorithm running on an individual sensor node, and it it should be replicated on all individual machines. So what happens as a first step, we need to estimate regions for all features, and then based on that, we can compute membership function, obviously based on the method I discussed before. And then we have a predefined rule base. This is the rule base. Then the observation goes through the particular rule base, and once the decision is reached, so the corresponding action is taken, whether we need to decrement trust value or we are going to transmit mobile agent. This is the application. This is the test bed setup. We use 2 Z modes and a PC for our experiments. We use TinyOS running on Z modes, and these are the computational and communication capabilities of uh, of these tiny nodes. So you can see it has only 128 KB program flash memory and 250 kilobit per second data rate. So very low data transfer rate. So this can show you that you really cannot transmit mobile agent very freely using this kind of low data rate. So these are uh, some of the observations which we generated through our experimental test bed, and then we run our algorithm on these observations, and we computed certain results. We also built interfaces, application interfaces, which is actually based on two panels: configuration panel and report panel. Using configuration panels on your mobile phone or your laptop, you can actually set different parameters for a particular temperature sensor. You can define its identity, and then uh, you can uh, you can designate a particular role to that sensor node within your smartphone. You can define its trust value, its bootstrap trust value. You can define its location, and then based on that, you can define certain regions. You can define initial values of region, and then automatically those values will be updated with the passage of time. So once you run your system for few iterations, then you can generate reports using this report panel, and there are certain parameters, certain dates. Using those parameters, you can set different duration, and you can retrieve different types of report. So in terms of results, we found that uh, in terms of energy consumption, our schemes performed much better as compared to the uh, existing schemes, some of the existing schemes. So, and similarly for detection rate, we were able to uh, achieve much higher detection accuracy as compared to the conventional decision tree basic decision tree approach, which is the relevant scheme to compare with. And in terms of memory processing time and energy consumption, we found that our solution is reasonable enough to work in low resource computational devices. Right. So this was the skeleton of mobile agent-based cross-layer anomaly detection for smart sensor network using fuzzy logic. And here I have listed some of the ongoing work which is I am doing with international collaborators. The first one is the cross-layer trust-based consensus protocol for peer-to-peer energy trading using fuzzy logic. So we have basically used the concept of cross-layer and fuzzy logic, and we proposed a consensus protocol in an energy trading system using obviously using blockchain. So this work has been recently accepted by Internet of Things Journal, and it is due to appear in their next volume. This is, by the way, a very high impact factor journey, Q1 journey with about 10 impact factor. In an and in this work, I am collaborating with some researchers from Australia, uh, UK, and Bangladesh. And we are also planning to work on a few other projects in this year. And then fuzzy in the loop driven low cost and secure biometric user access to servers. So here we have used fuzzy logic uh, eh, to for secure biometric user access in a server environment. So that work has appeared in IEEE transactions on reliability last year. Again, this is a really good transaction, Q1 transaction. And in this work, I have collaborated with authors from Australia, Canada, UK, Turkey, and Pakistan. This is work of my was working as a assistant professor in Pakistan. So she did this work, and we published that work last year, IEEE Transaction Industry publication. This is again a very interesting work. We are extending this work now, relating it with the current COVID-19 pandemic related situation, where if you have multiple services, uh, multiple healthcare services, how can you rank them depending upon certain aspect, and how can we ensure consumers' privacy in that setting? So it's a very interesting extension of this work is what we are exploring at the moment. Then there are some other ongoing works, AI-driven aquaponic system. Uh, this work is being done by one of my PhD students at University of South Wales. Some socio-technical business risk and vulnerability assessment process for industrial control system. Again, a work which is being done by my another PhD student here in University of South Wales. We are also working on blockchain-driven edge computing enabled model for healthcare services for a particular type of cancer treatment. We are working on a solution. So for this, I am collaborating with faculty members from NUST University, Pakistan, and then blockchain-driven edge computing enabled model for unmanned aerial vehicles. Uh, so for this work, I am collaborating with another university in Pakistan, COMSET. So you can see basically I have different application areas ranging from smart vehicle to healthcare application to smart home, and we develop different solutions, different cybersecurity solutions. Those are driven by human in the loop, social, technical, and business motives. Motives. So these are some of my ongoing works or recently completed works, and then our group, broadly speaking, we are covering number of areas such as cybercrime and digital forensics. This is one of the core strengths of our group, and a couple of my colleagues, they are doing really good works in collaboration with local police department, and obviously they have a couple of Europe-wide uh, projects. Then blockchain, critical infrastructure, Internet of Things, data recovery, malware analysis, phishing. So a broad range of areas are being covered by my colleagues. And these are some of the listed ongoing projects. For instance, the first one, cyber maintainable safety critical complex system. Then for mobile phones to code. This is related to uh, forensic dimension of cybersecurity, and then obviously certain uh, other projects or other research works, ongoing research works in different dimensions which we are exploring. Right. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much for being so patient, and now it's over to you to ask questions if you have any. Thank you.
Very good, Mohammed. I clap my hands in as a representative of the entire audience that we unluckily cannot hear and see today. So I loved your talk a lot. So let me just switch the view here. So great. So maybe I go to this here. Good. Yeah. Sorry, I loved your talk a lot. And for the audience, there's now the last chance to put some questions to the Slido. Let me start with the first question. It's a very open and hard question. So what would you say for home networks? What is the biggest challenge? And I ask you that because I've seen that you work in really a broad range of research, and therefore you are exactly the right person to ask. So what would you say, if you had to pick a single one, what is the biggest challenge for a home network today?
For a home network, privacy is probably the most important concern, especially because of the lack of awareness. If we talk about uh, if you look at the smart you look at the kids, they are fond of playing with smart toys. So many of those smart toys, they do not have built-in security capability. So they have location trackers, they have some other sensors incorporated in those gadgets. So and the people who are using those devices, they are not aware of the risk which is associated with them. So there is some ongoing regulatory efforts by governments across the globe. In UK, they have prepared an initial draft of relevant regulations, uh, and there are some regulations in place already in place in other parts of the world, but still it's a very immature sort of area. It's probably the biggest threat. But that's the one aspect, the smart toys. And then obviously you can connect so many different kinds of devices within the smart home
Yeah,
environment. I would say privacy is the probably the more important risk area.
very good. So, Alex, which are the questions we have from the audience? You have to unmute.
Sorry, my bad. We have several questions from the audience. Some of them I will try to merge them into one more general question. For instance, the most liked one was, does user-centered solutions exist to inform users about security of their installations? And what are the options to explain security to users? And you have several similar questions about how can your solution come to the end user, and when will this kind of solutions be available in the homes of the end users?
Yeah, I mean that's that's a good question actually. It's a more broader question. Mark could probably also comment on this, but yeah, uh, that's there is a gap between academia and industry, and especially if we look at from commercialization's perspective. So we do propose some good proposals, and but because of that gap, which we are trying to bridge somehow, we are trying to widen our collaboration. So we would see uh, what kind of commercial value we can offer to those industrial people. That's probably the one thing which I would say uh, is limiting those big giants, uh, big manufacturers. They do not invest enough on cybersecurity. So they even have basic passwords, uh, configured in those toys, which an hacker could easily use to connect with those devices. So now, I mean, it's first the mindset, then the commercial value. So there are some good solutions, but it depends. I cannot exactly answer, I mean, when it could be available, but as a society, uh, probably we need to make a lot of effort where we can have these kind of sophisticated solutions in place. But if you want me, if I mean, if we have a right kind of collaboration with a particular industry partner, so this is a readily available solution. We have built an application, so they just need to configure this on the different nodes, and then they can integrate it as one of the modules of their existing application. So it's just the plug and play sort of thing. But it's all about those high level CEOs, whether they think it's the right time to invest on cybersecurity, unless it is forced upon them by governments across the globe.
Okay, thank you. There is a linked question with your answer. Can the recent improvements, no, sorry. Do you believe the suppliers of smart home appliances and the users of those appliances are aware of the risks regarding security and privacy? So if I want to buy a smart home, do I have the knowledge about the security of this home?
Unfortunately, not. I mean, they are not even aware of these basic things.
Okay.
So forget about the more sophisticated attacks. So if I mean, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the, we have recently have an incident of Manchester United hack, where some sensitive data was that was compromised, and they the attackers or hackers were demanding some ransomware from them. So you can see they have particular IT teams, then cyber security teams, and even their data assets are vulnerable to security threats. But I mean, smart home domain is a very open domain at the moment for attackers, and uh, probably industry, academia, and government. They all
Okay.
need to come together, and they need to think about the risk it poses, and especially to vulnerable peoples like kids.
Okay. Thank you. And so, according to you, what is the biggest challenge in home networks today?
Home networks, privacy. We discussed that before. I mentioned privacy, the location privacy. Actually, there has been some recent incidents of crime uh, by using the by accessing the coordinates of toys. Hackers were able to identify the position of kids, and there has been some recent incidents. So probably the secure awareness, we can have some awareness campaigns in educational institutes. We can run them. We can run those educational campaigns in national or international media. For instance, here at University of South Wales, we do have uh, open days, and we try to educate people in those open days. Recently, I recorded a talk related to the uh, risks posed by these smart and connected devices to households, especially to kids. So probably we can play our part of imparting awareness among people.
Yes, sure. Okay, thank you.
So I totally agree with you that privacy is probably the biggest challenge, and I have two linked questions. So the first one you started with already, namely awareness. So security is nothing that sells, because you want to have a product that has a functionality, and security is only important when it's broken. And we have this problem with the companies already, and private users, they are even less aware, to my experience. So you already said some campaigns. Do you think we need cybersecurity knowledge in schools also? So that is like part of the cultural education. Do you have an opinion to that?
Yeah, that's a very good point you have raised actually. We have recently have a call from Welsh government here, that is about actually, it's not about awareness, not about totally about the awareness among the kids, but it's about assessing the vulnerability of ICT infrastructure of educational institute. So once we will start addressing those areas, so that would probably create awareness among school teachers and school administration, and then obviously uh, they would seriously start thinking about including this into their curriculum, and educating students. So in my personal opinion, I am a very strong advocate of this fact that we must start, educating kids from even from primary school. They understand what these hacks are. Year 3, 4 students, and we should have it as part of curriculum.
Very, very good. And I also second this. Do you have the impression that through the confinement situations that we had due to this COVID-19, that the people are a little bit more aware of their dependency on technology?
Sorry, I there was some
Ah,
disruption in
so
the.
so we had this confinement, and do you think that people are more aware of their dependence on technology today?
Uh, They are, but I mean, I don't know how much the internal, I mean, how much they are aware of the underlying threats of using this technology. Uh, there have been surge, obviously there have been surge in the usage of technology in last year or so, and that has actually made more richer over the last year. So probably that's the time we can ask them to invest back on certain parts, certain facets of society, including maybe cybersecurity could be one of the areas where they could invest uh, more awareness campaigns could be launched at different levels, not only about educational institutes, whether those are uh, from primary school to high school to university, but also even beyond that, national media, international media. So probably a more coherent effort is required.
And this is perfect because this is also one of the main goals of the series, to raise awareness, so to show the people what is going on. And you perfectly did that. So we are on the right path. Also related to that, do you think there's more valuable data in the homes today than 5 years ago? So which also can be attacked by ransomware, for instance.
Sorry, more valuable data?
So do you think that the data in the homes is more valuable today because the people are creating more data, and like 5 years ago maybe they did not, and now it's more, and therefore the homes are also like more valuable targets, for instance, for ransomware, for instance?
Yes, because now we have uh, more and more gadgets, the home gadgets equipped with these sensors and communicating components. So then, when these devices talk to each other, and then or these devices talk to their particular application, and especially when we try to integrate these applications together to offer more advanced services to user for their convenience, so obviously we would have much more rich data repository, and also some other information which could be exploited uh, by the user. And we are more, I mean, many it's a matter of convenience and security. Sometimes when you try to have a very secure environment, so it may not be convenient for users. So you can look at the example of single sign-on. If you have single sign-on across different applications, so it is a very convenient for from users perspective, from usability's point of view. But on the other hand, if you have some financial applications tied into single sign-on, so it could pose a serious threat. You can lose your sensitive information. So yeah, there's more integration of sensing and actuating technology in our smart home component. So obviously the attack, the surface for attacker is obviously growing.
And also to add to that a little bit, so what is also interesting is that the people invest actively in devices that are invading their privacy. When you think about an Alexa, for instance, Google Home, Apple, however it's called, or the smartphones themselves, which have software capabilities, remote accessibility. So it's also that the threat vectors towards the user, they are constantly growing. Would you agree to that?
Yeah. So again, I mean, this boils down to the interoperability between convenience and security. So I mean, many of these applications are owned by tech giant. They have their own security and privacy policy, and they forced us to accept their policy. It may not be, I mean, there's apparently no change in Europe and UK, but in many other countries, people are forced to accept their policies. And all different tech giants, they have their own policies. And because they use that data, offer customized services to their customers. Uh, so there have been some recent incident where the courts in EU have they uh, have given huge penalty to Facebook and some other giants, but I mean, still there's not an integrated effort where uh, security uh, could be pushed as a top priority as compared to the convenience. So
Okay. So thank you. There is some questions that arrived from the Slido. So quite general one and two precise questions. Can the recent improvements in machine learning, for instance, neural networks, help detect cyber attacks on IoT networks?
yes, a lot of uh, current work, I mean, is based on neural networks, deep neural networks, especially in those application areas where we receive continuous streams of data. So ultimately, we have a big amount of data. So in those applications, these convolutional neural network and deep learning solutions are more application, more relevant. And if we look at larger networks, I mean, those are vehicular related network, road infrastructure network, and some other critical national infrastructure networks. There we have huge amount of data coming through multiple input streams. So there, obviously, these deep learning solutions are more applicable, and we see uh, innovative solutions every other day.
Okay, thank you. So now two more precise questions. The first one is, yes, I will find it. Yeah, what are the most common protocols for sending or receiving smart home device data? And is there an unified language to control all sensors?
Smart homes.
Yeah, how do we manage to receive and send whole sensors data if there are on different
There,
protocols?
as I mentioned in my talk, the ZigBee 802.15.4 and ZigBee. This is used by low power, low data transmitting devices. But depending upon the, many of these smart home devices, they actually uh, they use those low data transmission channels. So that is the relevant stack, and it has certain protocols which are used for this. And what was the other part of your question?
It was what yeah. Is there yeah, it was the same question. So does exist a new unified language to control all sensors? So
Uh,
instead of having lots of different
in,
protocols and queries and
yeah,
everything like that.
interoperability is an issue.
Okay.
So things like JSON and XML at application level, we can use these building blocks, which can enable these different devices to talk to each other. So unified format of data transmission, and then obviously we can store them accordingly uh, based on our requirement. But data exchange could be carried out using
Okay.
XML and JSON based formats.
Okay. So now a use case question, quite interesting. I have to find it again. Where is it? Yeah, okay. So might you please explain more on anomalies? When I take your fire at home example, could this alarm be handled wrongly as anomaly?
Yes, uh, the solution, as I mentioned in the initial part of the talk, this is actually complementing some other mechanism. So in this case, I gave a specific example where we can define certain values of temperature, and if the values are closer to the received values of sense data are closer to those predefined bound, even if marginally, if there is a marginal difference, it could, it in a traditional scheme, it would generate an alarm. In our scheme, we have a certain tolerated region, and then on top of that, we have used fuzzy logic, which actually itself fuzzifies those crisp boundaries. So this we have enough cushion depending upon how you set up this system in your smart home uh, to uh, to actually improve the detection accuracy.
Okay. So it's there is no more questions from the Slido side. So I can give the hand to Mark Oliver now, and thank you for your answers.
Thank you. Thanks for asking.
And so, of course, I have more questions. So that means if there are still more questions, use the time to put the question in the Slido, and Alex will also raise them then afterwards. So I want to come back to the technology side. So many of the people see that at the moment there's like Bitcoin that is rocketing through the sky, and it's also using blockchain technology. And you were also doing blockchain research, as I've seen. So what would you say is the potential of using distributed ledgers, which is a technology behind the applications?
Yeah, I mean, we cannot use blockchain for everything. I mean, that's the one misperception people have, because the conventional uh, functionality uh, of our system is centralized computing. It's more like, if you look at the how humans have evolved over the years. So we have more centralized systems, centralized power structure, and now it's more like giving liberty to people and more peer-to-peer interaction. So but however, this shift is not that much easy, and it may not be relevant for all application. So but in so many applications, obviously it has its own advantage, and uh, uh, we can actually break down the traditional centralized functionality of particular systems and convert it into peer-to-peer system. For instance, we have recently proposed an innovative idea of energy trading platform using uh, blockchain. We have proposed a consensus protocol for that, and it follows the peer-to-peer computing paradigm, where a community, I mean, within a community, we can set up a trade mart sort of system, and anyone could trade the excessive uh, energy with other people by preserving their individual identities, and using, and even we can incorporate things like cryptocurrency in that system, so everything could be anonymous. So yeah, so depending upon the first thing we need to look at whether uh, can we uh, can we make the system more democratic rather than autocratic, having a centralized authority, and then we can deploy blockchain technology there.
Very good. We talked about AI before. So will AI save security? Will it make the world more secure? And the second question, which is a little bit more concrete, which is how would you say did AI influence the security research landscape?
Yeah, AI is the next big thing. If you couple it with the cyber security, I mean, how it is a big thing. It's not next big thing. It is, I would say, the big thing at the moment, because especially from IoT's perspective, we have a lot of data generated, and human being, they cannot handle this kind of data. Even very moderate amount of data cannot be handled by human beings. So everything is being automated. Whenever we have data, especially we have large amount of data, um, we can explore that data from different dimensions, from different angles. We can structure them in a different ways. We can couple them in a different ways, and we can extract information from them. So using these innovative AI-based methods, obviously there has been advancements in different applications. so many different applications. Even we could not notice the change in some of the application. I was just discussing with someone that I have prepared these slides, the PowerPoint slide which I have presented today, using simple Microsoft PowerPoint tool. So, but there is an additional tool inside it, using which you can give a smart look to your slides. So that tool basically it can run on the fly, and it can give you different options to convert your simple slide into more smart, so-called smart slide. So you see, this is the one application in only within a one tool. So we have so many different kinds of data being generated by different systems. So that is then used by AI uh, AI algorithm to offer different services. So in terms of cyber security, now in future, uh, that's the one area of concern actually for people, that uh, with the advent of if you can say, if we have much more computational power in coming years, so many machines would start learning by themselves, and especially if we talk about from bad guys perspective or rogue states perspective, and they have the uh, the computational enough computational capability. So then we could go into automated warfare, uh, where those cyber criminals could have their self-trained, self-adapted agents, whether those can capture a military hardware equipment, or those can capture critical national infrastructure environment. Then it would be a war between AI good guy versus AI bad guy. So all of it could be out of human beings' hands.
Very, very good answer. And you were raising another very interesting question of me, which is, do you think the cyber attacks by states, this is something that will increase in the future? I leave it open. I also have an opinion to that.
Cyber threats.
Cyber attacks by states. This Stuxnet attack that was almost certainly run by a state. You have other attacks by
Yes. I mean,
North Korea, for instance,
states,
and stuff like that.
States have more. I mean, they have access to more sophisticated equipment, and they have their own conventional intelligence systems in place. I mean, under the cover, almost all the states have their own cyber units, and that's not necessarily for bad purposes, but I mean, for protecting their own critical national infrastructure and other services. So, but sometimes you have to go on offensive rather than being defensive. So, for them, probably those guys would need to launch to to destroy the capability. There was a recent incident in Iran. I mean, it is believed that some external state factors, they actually corrupted their computers, their software related to nuclear capability, and then ultimately they were able to destroy that. So this is one example, and there could be some other cases as well. So yeah, it's the state level. Also at the state level, uh, now governments are investing actually a lot in cybersecurity across the world.
So I would so I agree with what you say, and I would say, or my hope would be that maybe in the future we would move from real wars to cyber wars, because then at least people would not die, but we would have it's more like a checkers game, and then if it would be accepted socially, that for me that would be an interesting human evolution from taking the sword or the machine gun of killing people towards something else.
If you look at, I mean, if it's a state level thing, it is going to disturb human being. I can quote an example of a cyber attack that was launched on a smart grid infrastructure in USA few years ago, and that actually resulted in disruption of electricity cut for few days in a particular state. So you can see this is only one. It is not still clear it was that attack was launched by a state or some cyber criminals, or at least they have not disclosed it. But you can see what kind of impact it had. So now our most of the critical national infrastructures are dependent on ICT infrastructure, actuating IoT enabled infrastructure. So if you do not protect them properly, they can uh, actually, I mean, hackers, whether sponsored by state or or they are self-motivated, they can cause serious disruption in our day-to-day life.
And I also love that you raised this point again, because it's exactly this awareness thing. And of course, my hope was like in sometime in the future, because at the moment the reality is that IT is helping weapons to focalize better on the targets and stuff like that. So at the moment we are more enabler of warfare technology with what we have, but maybe in some
as
time in the future.
as an academic, we always believe in a peaceful world, but the political reality is entirely different. So they have to
Yeah,
invest on military equipment. So now it's the part of uh, fifth generation warfare, and even beyond that, if you look at the fifth generation warfare, is all about communication and miscommunication. And then when you are targeting that communication itself, so it's a much more advanced than that. So it's an interesting area to explore, not only for us academics but also for governments to I mean to secure their shores from bad guys.
yeah. And also like the internet itself was like created with a military background in mind, which is so it's like it's also an enabler still for things in that direction. In France, there's at the moment a huge funding round. Macron was announcing it this week of 1 billion euros for a thing. Is there something similar in UK at the moment?
uh, in UK, I mean, there are different ongoing efforts. We had recently had Brexit, so in regulatory, in terms of regulatory uh, amendments, we are still in the transition phase. They are in the process of drafting some new regulations. One of them I have already mentioned, related to security of those connected toys and those kind of equipment. So obviously government is investing. They have their multi-pronged strategy. They are investing on us on academic projects, academic research and development projects. It's not only at UK level but also at uh, individual uh, states level, whether it's Welsh government or other counterparts. So they all are investing on different fronts, and they are hoping that they would stay. I mean, they would achieve the aim of being leader in cybersecurity.
Yeah. And as you also mentioned it, do you think Brexit will have an effect on cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean
It's
that's
like again abroad and like very it's unclear, but just like as you were mentioning it, like just some thoughts about it.
yes. I mean, if we boil down it to individual pieces from regulations perspective, obviously the regulation sphere has changed. Now UK needs to come up with their. Uh, I mean, if they want to, they could come up with their own legislative measures, so which they have started to adopt in certain areas. For example, in relation to GDPR, we already have a Data Protection Act in place, uh, which was developed which was approved in 2018 when UK was part of EU. Uh, but now, I mean, they have started to expand their legislation and they have started to cover some other gray areas which were broadly covered under the EU legislation. So in terms of legislation, yes. In terms of investing, I mean, this is another thing. We have this COVID pandemic related situation. So it's right from the time there was the Brexit. Government is probably more busy on, handling the current vaccination program and those situations. But there are some parallel ongoing efforts where they are investing on academia to enhance the capability of individuals to have more skilled people in place. So there are certain regulatory requirements for business operating within the UK jurisdictions, and they have to get certain certifications. So ISO 27001, if I can recall correctly. That's that does not. I mean, that's not only enable those organizations to work inside UK, but they can also operate globally. And then there are some other uh, cyber essential and cyber essential plus certification uh, which are enough for them to operate at UK level. So there is a consistent effort from government. NCSC is actually the main body here, which is overseeing these kind of activities and linking academia with industry and academia with government, industry with government. So the triangle is being handled by NCSC, and we are an active part of NCSC activities, uh, and I mean our undergraduate program is one of the very few recognized programs across the UK, and we received gold standard in that last year. Only Welsh University, and there are only six universities across the UK, and we won
Very good.
uh, we won
Congrats on
cyber
that.
we won cyber university uh, of the year award last year, and actually we have won this last 2 years, and our competitors were Oxford University, the other finalist Oxford, and Metropolitan Manchester University. So yeah, in our university at Welsh level, Welsh government level, and UK wide, there is a lot of, I mean, there are a lot of activities which are going on, uh, whether you look uh, from legislation perspective, you look from capacity building's point of view, you look from uh, providing relevant guidelines to businesses to follow certain requirements. And obviously the same is going on in government as well. They have their own, if they have their own cyber departments, uh, whether those are related to police or those are related to defense institutions. For instance, for police, we have an active collaboration with local police. A couple of my colleagues, they are working in forensic investigations. There are some
Yeah.
ongoing projects there. So yeah, a lot of activities under the broader umbrella.
Yeah. And also very good because it shows again your answer that security is nothing that is only on a technical level, but because we have everything with the humans using technology over public bodies, over legislative, over the executive, and so all the parts of our society are relevant for cybersecurity, which is a very good ending of the Q&A. As last item, let's have a quick look at the mind map that Alex was creating. I don't know if you have the YouTube open. If not, you can click on the link in the chat and then you also see the mind map. And Alex, maybe you want to moderate the mind map?
Yeah, I can speak about it. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, nice. But my webcam is not working yet. Okay.
Now it's
So
clear.
yeah, we asked users to visitors to speak a few words about their idea about smart homes, and the answers are quite interesting. I don't know if you want to comment them, some of them, but I found that the answers are quite broad because they focused on the network aspects like privacy, IoT, security knowledge, on the user-centered aspects like comfort, automation, and simplification, and some security aspects like a security nightmare, headache, and everything like that. So it's quite interesting to see that answers are very broad, very different on several aspects.
Right. Yeah. I can see diversity in the keywords. Yeah, that's true.
So it's yeah,
Very
it's
good.
what do you have in mind when we ask a smart home? Do you have this kind of answers in mind of different ones?
Uh, yeah, automated home, privacy, daily life, comfort, different security knowledge, security nightmare. It's very relevant keywords actually. We can relate all these without discussion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. So yeah, Mohammed, thank you very much once again for the great talk and the wonderful discussion. So for me, it was fantastic, and I'm sure that also for the audience, they could take a lot home. So thank you very much for being with us today. And yeah, I'm sure that if the people have more questions, they can get in contact with you. And thanks again.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me for this talk, and I also really enjoyed the talk, and it has been really good experience. And we are open for collaboration. Obviously, I would be happy to answer any follow-up questions as well. And in case if people want to collaborate with us in different capacities, whether those are activities related to research or development, or even beyond that, we would be happy to be engaged. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And yeah, that closes today's session. Next month, on the 31st of March, we will have a talk by Sylvain Guy, who is the co-founder and chief technology officer of Secure IC. And this will be a very exciting talk again. And so please join everybody, tell your friends, and share the knowledge about our event from today. And we are looking forward to seeing you also in the next event. Thank you very much and have a great evening.
Bye bye.
Bye.
On est ravis de vous avoir accueillis et de vous avoir vu participer à cette manifestation en Bretagne. Merci à vous.
Cher CyberCNI, pôle d'excellence région Bretagne. Au revoir et à la prochaine.